State of the Nation, all about state of women, actually. And that is, we'll be talking about the racial, economic, reproductive, and policy realities. We have a great lineup. And I have to say, what really inspired us about this session was really, what is the state of the nation? You go back 100 years and you look at women's history, and especially when we talk about Crystal Eastman, many of you know her, 1920, fiery activist, actually co-wrote the Equal Rights Amendment with Alice Paul. And after all that work and everything they did and all that progress, they understood that her famous words are, "Now at last we can begin." So here we are, like full circle, 100 years later, and we are fighting the same battles. And in fact, in some cases, we see that we're going backward when it comes to reproductive rights. So today we really wanted to talk about, what is the state of women right now? And we covered just a couple areas of economic, reproductive, racial, and policy. Very big. So we have a big show. We have a great lineup. We have our great team in the room, and we have you guys with us, and we have our spring wear on. So good for us. So we're popping into spring with some good colors this season. So let me get started here with our great guests. We have Anna Bradley here. Hello, Anna. Welcome into the room. Community advocate and advocate on women's right and racial realities. She'll do that segment with Krista. And then we have welcome Sarah Jane Glynn, first time on the show, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Welcome, Sarah. I love your glasses. You're looking good. I saw you on a show and you had leopard on, and I loved it. So I'm so glad you're here with us. And you will be talking about the economic realities today. And then we have Kate Kelly here, fiery feminist activist for women and LGBTQ community. And she's a excommunicated Mormon. So we welcome everybody on the show. So I can't wait till Kate's here. She is really a lot of fun, and an ERA fighter. And then we have, she'll be talking about reproductive realities. And then we have Lisa Sales. Lisa, welcome. Now, everybody knows Lisa is an ERA warrior, just somebody that's an equality badass is all I have to say about Lisa. She constantly is fighting for women's rights. She's the chair of Fairfax County Commission for Women, and she's on the ERA Coalition Advisory Board. So Lisa, how are you, friend? Welcome. And lastly, we have an icon with us today, Ellie Smeal from the Feminist Majority, president of that, and a former president of NOW. Lot to say about her, and that she will really get to really what it will take for NOW it really can begin, because the fight is just starting. So with that said, we have as we always have to have some announcements. As we say, it's a terrible death to die, a terrible death to die, but we always have our announcements. And one of those will be, Louisa is not here today. And so if you are interested in the legislative update, Robin, can you put in the chat that we will have the link to the Virginia Grassroots right in there, and you can get all the awesome updates from the Grassroots website on everything that's going on. It's so comprehensive. So we will put that in the chat. And also, if you want to join the legislative debrief session at the Grassroots Coalition meeting, we will put the invite in there. Sign up. It's Sunday, March 7th at 4 p.m. You won't want to miss that. There will be a lot of talking about the candidates and the races and so on. So please put that in the chat, ladies. And with that said, I'd like to introduce my awesome team. We have Stair Calhoun, Wave Stair, Ambassador of Buzz. We have Show Wizard, Robin Zeff Warner. I see you there working quite astutely. Then we have a co-host, Krista Jones. How are you, friend? Are you there?
Yes, I'm doing good today. Thank you.
Are you over here? Are you writing your dissertation?
No, why? Why do you say that?
I don't know, but you know what? I was laughing. You have a necklace on, and I have, and look, you have a bigger necklace on.
It's like the same, but just bigger, right?
Yeah, I think. I was laughing because the first time I put a jacket and a shirt on today, and I felt like I was getting ready for my senior picture.
Well, it's like you're going to work, right? 9 to 5.
Yeah, 9 to 5. Yeah, but now it seems like we're working like 12 hours around the clock. So
That's right.
so glad you're here. And we will, like, I'm trying to think, we need to get stuff started about some good news, Krista, about what we're doing with the show. So I'd like to call up Robin to get us started with some slides, a little pitch about our Friday Power Lunch, and explain to you what we'll be doing.
Okay, give me 1 minute to spotlight and get the slides up.
Yes, get those slides up. Hi, friend.
Right, well, here we go. So first, we want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing and what our plans are this year for the Power Lunch. It's now a year-round activity. We just finished our winter season, December, January, February. When we unite, we win. And now, as you can see with our spring flair, we've moved on to spring, which is March, April, May. When we organize, we win. Then in the summer, when we summit, we win. The summer is going to all be about the summit. And then in the fall, well, it's the election. When we vote, we win. Catherine, you want to say anything else about it?
I want to explain to everybody, we're really excited about this. You know, when we do the programming, all these years, we've done different things. And this year we've made 4 pillars, 4 colors, 4 seasons. And I'm sorry that Rudy Giuliani really ruined our idea of the 4 seasons. So we're going to take it over. And you can see that we've thought all about it, not only in colors, because we love flair, we love swag, we love good work. And so each season, each segment is going to be broken down in what we want to learn. And we encourage you, because part of this is we need input. So from speakers to work to good things, please contact us, email us, and put it in the chat. But this will be our for the rest of the seasons, and our summer would be pretty exciting. We're going to do a couple summits, we think, small summits. So we're not really sure. We're planning it out. So we hope you'll stick with us and enjoy the fun ride we created. So next, though, I want to say one more thing about our launch, Patreon. Robin. Yes. This is it, our springwear. This is exciting.
This is so exciting. So first, we want to thank all of our early backers who helped us decide that, yes, we could do a show all year round, all 4 seasons. Early backers gave us the seed money to make this show happen. But now we're moving out of our first season and we've committed to all 4 seasons. And to do that, we need to find continuing support.
Because so I need to buy a wardrobe for each season, don't you think? I mean,
there you go. But we also have things to pay for, like Zoom and our project management and Dropbox and all those other things. Because for pretty much the first 5 months, Steer, Catherine, and I bankrolled the whole thing, and it got to be a bit much. But now you can join us and become a monthly backer, a monthly patron. Now, what can you do? Well, for just $5 a month, face it, that is less than 1 coffee at Starbucks. You can help make sure this show goes on every week. For $10 a month, less than the cost of doing takeout for lunch, you get to have lunch with us every Friday.
I like that.
And lastly, for those badasses among you, and we know we've got a room full of badasses, for $25 a month, you can make sure everything happens. Now, I want to stress, the show is free. It will always be free. Every one of you in this show right now, you are our crew, but we have bills to pay. And by being one of our patron sponsors, you can help us make sure we always pay these bills. So how does it work? Well, you just choose a membership tier, you sign up, tap, 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 you add a payment method, and voila, you start getting benefits. Now the show is free, but we have some perks. We know that you're not doing this for the perks alone, though who doesn't love perks? But you know what? Let me tell you a little bit about some of the perks. What do we have? 1, as a supporter, you will be the first person to hear about our upcoming lineup through our sneak peek emails that our backers are already enjoying. we will always show our love and adoration by having your name in our show credits. You will get a discount at the Badass Boutique. Who doesn't love that?
I love that.
Stair makes sure we have great swag always. Then the more you give, the more you get. We're going to be offering things like shout outs. You can have a special message read during the show. Campaigns could thank their volunteers. You could wish somebody a happy birthday. We also offer exclusive Zoom backgrounds like you're seeing here for every season.
Yeah, I love it.
And we're going to be doing some very special events like pre-show conversations with guests. Now, this is just what we're starting with. And you'll even get to get sneak peeks of the new Friday Power Lunch podcast. Oh my goodness.
Oh, wait. The podcast is not ready yet, but we're going to be doing the podcast. We have a lot of podcasters in the room. So good.
Yeah, we got a lot going, a lot of ideas and a lot of things in the works. Anyway, that is an overview of being one of our Patreon peeps. So go to Patreon. It's patreon.com/FridayPowerLunch. There will be a link. It's in the chat, but it's in every email you get from us. It's on our webpage. We make it easy for you to find it, and it's easy to sign up.
Nice.
And with that, Catherine, I am turning it back.
I know. I'm so excited. I have to say, yeah. And the best thing about it still being in here, you don't always have to have, you can still have your jammy pants on. So what a great way to spend your Friday with us. So I'm really excited about our lineup, and I want to get to the state of women's equality. So my good friend, Krista, come on up on the screen and let's get this party started with your guest. And we'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. And thank you, Robin, for that great overview of how we can support the show. It's so great to see that Laura Martinez has already said that she's just become a patron. So definitely we need the support. That's excellent. And, as we think about celebrating the centennial of the 19th Amendment and also the fight for the ERA over all of these years, it's really important for us to talk about how we need to be very inclusive in terms of the ERA. So we have Anna Bradley here today, who is a community advocate. Can we see you, Anna?
I don't see your screen on. Anna, can you turn it on?
Oh.
Anna, I don't see your screen, and it's
We want to see you.
Your screen is on, but it's black.
Is it on now?
No, it's
I'm showing it. Oh.
Ooh, what show glitch?
Oh no, we can't see you.
Can you see it now?
No, it's completely dark, Anna.
Yeah.
So it shows the video is showing.
That's weird. Well, I tell you what, why don't we just talk?
Okay.
We can hear you, Anna. Just speak loudly.
Wow.
Carry a big stick. Okay.
Indeed. Can you see it now?
No, we can't, but we'll go ahead and start just chatting.
Okay.
So can you talk about just how the fight for the ERA has worked to encompass all women? I know you've done a lot of work. You worked on a documentary, an excellent documentary about the fight for suffrage in Virginia. You're an active member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, who we all know has been on the front lines of fighting for the 19th Amendment and women's rights since you were founded. But can you talk about how the fight has been inclusive of all women?
Sure. Well, first I want to say it's great to be with you today, coming from Central Virginia during Women's History Month, as each of us continues to write her story. So I became a part of the fight for the ERA by working through VA Ratify ERA, an organization that we all know. And they were seeking to become more inclusive. And I have to give a big shout out to Eileen Davis and Katie Hornung, who were among the leaders there, and Lisa Sales certainly being one of the leaders in that movement. And they were seeking to be more of an inclusive organization. As you know, too often, Black contributions have not gotten what they have deserved, and unfortunately, the history of the fight for equality in this country has been very racist. And we do have too many Black women who have a memory of not being included, of whose contributions have not been given the merit that they are due. So there's tremendous work to be done, but because we felt an open welcoming here, we were able to help push Virginia to becoming the 38th and final state needed to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment to the US Constitution. Can you believe it's been almost a year since we had our great celebratory march in Richmond?
Anna, I'm really glad you made the point about the movement kind of being welcoming. And I still see it today, just talking to Katie. She gets so excited about working with the Deltas. She always wants to reach out to the Deltas for everything. And, you know, I think that is the secret sauce. A lot of times we talk about how that division exists, and a lot of circumstances, it's still really uncomfortable between women in terms of working together, but that's the key. You know, being welcoming and the people on a people level be inclusive. So thank you for sharing that. Can you talk about some of the racial and ethnic disparities that still exist today between women, among women?
Oh my goodness. You could take any category, whether it's health disparities, housing, income statistics. Unfortunately, people of color still tend to rank at the bottom. You can even look within sexuality and gender. One of my sheroes or heroines is Audre Lorde, and who gave this wonderful critique of patriarchy. And she was actually talking about the racism that existed between Black lesbians and white lesbians. And her classic essay, Can the Master's Tools Dismantle the Master's House? And she came out with that decisive no, the Master's tools will never dismantle the Master's house. And this fact is only threatening to those who still define the Master's house as their only source of support. So I think you can look at just about any category of our lived experience. And unfortunately, the thread of racism, of 200 years of slavery, of going through Jim Crow, and now with the hatred that seems to become accepted and commonplace that we're having to deal with today. I mean, we're living in interesting times, and just the working for equality, all of us are having to fight to preserve our democracy, to fight against voter suppression, the assault on the truth. We can look, and I'm interested to hear the comments that will be forthcoming about economic equality issues, because wealth inequality that's rendering too many people as being disposable, with the top almost 0.1% controlling an astronomical amount of wealth, and too many people who cannot distinguish between the justice-seeking Black Lives Matter movement from the hate groups and the insurgents who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, so the midst of fighting for equality.
Uh-oh, are you stuck, Anna?
Sometimes that broadband has to catch up.
Okay,
Yes.
Excellent. So Anna, thank you so much. You made such great comments this afternoon. And on the tip about talking about inequality, racial or ethnic inequality and economic inequality, we do have a poll. So we'll pull up the first poll question that relates to: when is Black Women's Equal Pay Day in 2021? So I think everyone knows that equal pay days have been established for women, for Black women, for Latino women. So this is the period of time when a Black woman would have to work an additional X number of months to catch up to white men. So when is the Equal Pay Day in 2021?
Ooh, look at this.
Makes you want to cry.
Yeah. Okay, do we want to
end that poll.
So
Look at that.
So August 3rd, exactly right. So that it takes Black women an additional 7.5 months
Wow.
to a 12-month year to catch up economically. So that really brings home, and your comments really bring home, Anna, that stark reality. So thank you so much for sharing today. And so now we are going to bring up Sarah Jane Glynn.
Hi, I'm so excited to be on.
Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah is the senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, and we're going to talk about the economic realities and disparities that women face. So, women's labor, free labor, has really been the backbone of our country for so long. We really don't frame it like that. And I think it's important to do that if we're going to talk about how we can eventually move ahead economically. Can you talk just more about pre-COVID? Can you paint the picture for us, what it was just like in terms of women in economics in the United States?
Sure. And I think your point about women's unpaid labor being a really vital aspect of the economy is a really important thing that we should be thinking about throughout this entire conversation. So even before COVID hit, women still experienced a wage gap. We still saw extreme employment segregation, where women were much more likely to be in low-paid, pink-collar jobs. Women are the majority of minimum wage earners. They're much more likely to be concentrated at the lower end of the wage spectrum. And a lot of women with children or with other caregiving responsibilities, so that might be an adult family member with a disability or an aging relative that they're providing care for, because we know most of the care work that happens is done by women. People were already struggling. And I think there's been a lot of focus on this because of the pandemic and because of school closures and daycare closures. But the truth is, even if we rewind a year, 5 years, 10 years, women have forever really been struggling to manage their paid work with this family caregiving in a context where there are very few supports. We're the only advanced economy in the world that doesn't guarantee paid maternity leave, for example. So women and families were really kind of left on their own to figure out a way to make it work. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, things weren't working. And so that's one of the concerns that I really have when folks talk about, oh, well, once we have more widespread vaccinations, once we get everybody into a healthier standpoint in terms of public health, then things will go back to normal. I don't want to go back to normal. Normal was really bad for most women. And so what we should be doing is thinking about how can we go back to something that's actually better than what we had before.
And can you talk a little bit about what impact COVID did have?
Yeah, so I'm sure lots of folks are seeing this in their own lives and in their communities. As schools closed, as daycares closed, women were the ones who picked up the majority of that caregiving work. So, like I said, if you accounted for time use, even pre-COVID, women did the vast majority of care work within families, but that's only gotten worse because of the pandemic and with the stay-at-home orders. And then that's coupled with the fact that the industries that have been the hardest hit, leisure and hospitality is a big one, education services, health services, government work, those are sectors that disproportionately impacted women. So it's kind of been this 1-2 punch of all of this increasing work within the home that is mostly done by women. And then the jobs that women had were the most likely to be negatively impacted because of the economic fallout from the pandemic. And the result has been really bad, frankly. There's just new data that came out this morning, so I haven't dug through all of it yet. But we know that in the last year, about 2.3 million women have left the labor force entirely. So they're not even looking for another job. They're just gone. They're at home full time. And almost half of those are women of color, right? So this is also a story about what's happening within communities of color, that when we talk, we sometimes, and by we, I mean me and folks like me, sometimes talk about women as if it's sort of one group that's really similar. But the truth is the impacts have been felt really differently. White women have experienced a lot of negatives as a result of the pandemic, for sure. But the hardest hit have been women of color and mothers of color in particular.
That's scary and sad. So what are some of the policy solutions that have been proposed to deal with all of these concerns about women in economics?
So there's a couple different things that we need to do. First of all, raising the minimum wage is a women's issue, and it would impact mostly women. Almost 60% of people who'd be impacted by raising the minimum wage are women. 8 million moms would see a raise if we raise the minimum wage. So that's one big piece of it. It's just getting more money into people's pockets is a really important component. We also just need to really overhaul our work-family policies. We need to have paid parental leave. No one should have to go back to work immediately after giving birth. Everyone should have a guarantee that they can have paid leave when they welcome a new child into their home. Everyone should have a guarantee for paid leave if they need to care for a seriously ill family member. Everyone should have a guarantee for paid leave if they themselves experience a serious health concern and need to take time off from work to get better, whether that's, accessing cancer treatments or having a life-saving surgery. Nobody should lose their job because they or a family member got sick. And these are really common sense policies that already exist in some states and that certainly exist across the world. So we have a ton of data about how these policies work and how they really help women and caregivers in particular. And so it's just a matter of creating enough of a conversation and putting enough pressure on Congress to actually get these things to pass. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to see movement in the next few years.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're optimistic. I am too. I think with so much momentum around, and unfortunately or fortunately, COVID, like you said, it was still existing before, but it shined a light on these issues and kind of forced us to find a solution. So thank you so much, Sarah Jane, for your comments. We have another poll question that we're going to launch now. According to data from the US Census Bureau, what was the average gender pay gap in the United States in 2018?
See, our smart audience. I'm looking at that question, Krista, in the chat. Sarah, you may be interested. Do you see it? It's my video's off because my school-age children are home.
Have had to cut back hours, and now I know I'm one of the lucky ones. Paying childcare workers better is imperative, daycare aides as well as teachers, in addition to higher minimum wage and paid leave. Anything you want to add on that, Sarah?
I would just say wholeheartedly, yes, that's absolutely right. Investing in childcare is important, both because it is an industry that employs a lot of women and a lot of women of color in particular, but also because childcare is critical infrastructure. Our economy cannot work if we don't have safe places for children to be cared for while their parents are working. So childcare is not a nice to have, it is a need to have for virtually all families. And those investments must be made because we're really at a crisis point right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah. So,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because somebody said they feel like they're at church.
Okay, it looks, so the answer was actually 18.9% is the average gender pay gap in the United States in 2018. So thank you all for participating in the poll. So thank you, Sarah Jane, and Catherine, I will turn it over to you.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Sarah Jane. That was just wonderful. I mean, because it's the backbone, the economics of this on women. And like you said, I'm so glad you mentioned that we can't go back to normal. Everybody says, let's go back to normal. Normal is not good for a lot of reasons. I hope that we can use this opportunity. There's an opening in policy and every other to just kind of go push right through on some of these things that we need to see changing. So thank you for joining us. You're awesome. And I want to understand about your eyeliner. You're the queen of eyeliner. I love that on your Twitter. You're just in the right place with us. I just love that you talked about your eyeliner. So you're looking good. Thank you for being here. All right, so I want to bring up our next guest. Our next guest is Kate Kelly. Hey, Kate. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good
Good.
to see you. I'm so glad to have you here. I think before COVID, you were supposed to be at the Women's Summit. You are in New York. This was when you were on Equality Now.
Yeah.
You were participating, and you're going to come, and then we had to cancel, which was really a big bummer. But we know, I don't know if you know, but we did end up doing a virtual one. And so great to have you on today, a fiery feminist and an advocate for equality. And I was listening to your podcast, Ordinary Equality, which we need to put that in the for everybody to listen to. So when I get a chance, we will put that in the chat. But it's all about reproductive justice. And this, just like Sarah was saying about childcare, it's like we say we want, this whole thing about children, and we don't seem to care about them once they're born, right? A little bit. But this really, the whole idea about the fight for reproductive control of our bodies goes way back to the very beginning of time. And also when we heard about Crystal Eastman talk about this, she knew 100 years ago that you had to have, feminism had to mean you had bodily autonomy. So I really want to see your input on, you see all these laws across the country fighting terribly, abortion, anti-abortion laws, anti-reproduction laws, anti-birth control laws, and then we're fighting for the ERA. So I would like your point of view. What's really going on here? Why reproductive choice is the linchpin and really women's equality?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. You guys are amazing. And I want to just say the first season of the podcast Ordinary Equality is all about the ERA. And I was in Virginia when the ERA, the 2 years leading up to ratification of the ERA, and met so many incredible women in Virginia who made this happen. A lot of you are on the call today. So shout out to everyone who made history and ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. You are my heroes. I'm from Utah, and we tried to ratify the ERA. For many years. I wrote the bill starting in 2017, and we never got out of the committee. So very impressed. Thank you for everything that you've done. I think, and then when we started doing the podcast, the second season, we decided to do the entire season about abortion. And the reason we decided to do that is the thing that came up again and again and again, as all women in Virginia probably know, at every hearing opposing basically every issue. It could be tax issue, it could be the Equal Rights Amendment, it could be, any issue. And the opposition to equality brings up the issue of abortion. And of course, to somewhat of a lesser extent, trans rights, although that's ramping up. And I think it's important to understand, like you said, Crystal Eastman, who was in the room when Alice Paul and others they came together and wrote the Equal Rights Amendment in 1921. So we're talking literally 100 years ago. Yes. They immediately started talking and giving speeches. And when the 19th Amendment was passed, Crystal Eastman gave a speech about birth control and about how bodily autonomy is of utmost importance, and that women cannot exercise any of their other rights and responsibilities without having access to reproductive health care. They just can't. Right. And they were talking about that in the 1920s. Nothing new. That this is, you read some of these speeches, and if they were being read out loud today, you'd think, oh, this person is so progressive or so radical. Right. And then you realize it's a person who lived 100 years ago. And so that's somewhat depressing, that we're still having these same conversations, and that actually we've lost some ground when it comes to reproductive rights. But I think that it's important to understand that the entire anti-abortion movement was intentionally engineered to be a political wedge issue, to get specific groups of people into the political fight that had not previously been in the fight. So this involves a lot of Catholics and also white evangelicals. And so it didn't just happen. It's interesting. I interviewed a woman named Sherry Finkbein. I don't know if some folks remember her. She was one of the first people ever to publicly talk about her abortion. She got an abortion in 1964. She had taken a drug called thalidomide, and it causes birth defects. And so Sherry was going to get an abortion, but because she also told the newspaper about thalidomide, it became public, her name, that she was going to get an abortion. And so the doctor refused to give it to her. She ended up having to go to Sweden. So she flew to Sweden to get the healthcare that she needed. And then she flew back, and her case was like a worldwide phenomena. So in 1964, again, well before Roe versus Wade, she became known as a woman who had terminated a pregnancy. The interesting thing is, she said they made a movie about it. Right. The movie she comes back to the airport and there's all these protesters and they have signs of fetuses and da 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 da. And she said, that is pure fiction. That did not exist. That movement, that, cohesive anti-abortion movement did not exist in that same way. And so I think it's interesting to know that it's a modern invention, that it is specifically used to target equality issues, and that it is specifically engineered to get certain types of people to vote a certain way.
Yeah,
And so you think about it like, okay, this didn't even exist in the 1960s, but it exists now.
right.
And what an effective political tool it is. So I think we need to understand it for what it is,
Exactly.
and understand that it is a concerted effort engineered by a small group of men, political operatives, in order to control a lot of what happens today. So that's
I listened to that podcast actually the other night, and it was so compelling, her story, and really sad. I mean, really, just because she had 5 children, and then she went on to have a couple more, and it was really about that. But it really brings home that this voluntary motherhood thing, that even with the economic implications, that when we're sort of focused on the Equal Rights Amendment, which will obviously be awesome, at the same time, this really powerful movement that's now made its way to the Supreme Court, intertwined, like you said, with this religious movement. Hypocrisy of it is just amazing. But it really is worrisome to me when we see, if you can launch that poll, Robin, about the amount of laws, if how many anti-abortion laws have been introduced so far in 2021, and and so what do we think here? I have to actually look at the answer because I made the poll, but then
People are still going. All right, people are still going. But if you want, here we go.
I see it. Yeah, good. Do you want to do it? Yep. And the answer is 384 in 43 states through February. That is how many laws are right now being enacted. So it's interesting. It's almost like this race. When getting the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution, what's your mindset if that happens, and we hope that will happen with the Biden administration? How will that change the conversation for abortion rights?
Yeah, I mean, again, you see that list, and it's hundreds of laws, anti-abortion laws, and attacking choice at every level. And as I saw someone in the chat say, state legislatures matter. That is so true. Most of the anti-abortion attacks and anti-abortion laws are on the state level. So it's such an important point. But I think the thing that we need to keep in mind is that all of these laws, all of this effort is designed very specifically to distract us from other progressive issues, to get all of our attention to defending our basic bodily autonomy,
Right.
and effort and money and organizing and all of that, just to defend ourselves, just to maintain that very low bar that is Roe versus Wade. And what I like to say is that Roe is the floor, not the ceiling, when it comes to access to reproductive health care. And so, they want us holding on to that, by the skin of our teeth, and having that always be in danger. And what we actually want is something much bigger than Roe. What we want is unfettered access to healthcare when it's needed. That's it. That's what we want. And that every person who needs to access abortion wherever they live, no matter what state they live in,
Right.
that they are able to access that. And that is not the case. The attacks that we've had against Roe versus Wade have dwindled the access to this very important.
Even birth control. We're talking simple things, and even with deformities or issues. So
we've lost ground, and so I think I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. If I did, I'd be a gazillionaire, and I'd be in charge of everything. But I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the Equal Rights Amendment portends for reproductive rights in the future. What I do know is that it's going to be permanent, and that it's going to outlive. And a lot of people are concerned about the justices on the Supreme Court currently, and they're very conservative. Justices, I think it's 6 out of 9 justices are Catholic on the Supreme Court now, and that's not the percentage of Catholics represented in the population, certainly not conservative Catholics. And so I think we have reason to be worried about the current Supreme Court, but the thing to keep in mind with the Equal Rights Amendment is it's going to outlive every single person on the Supreme Court today. It is going to be here in 100 years. It's going to be here in 200 years. It's going to be here in 300 years. And so not only will it outlive every person living on the Supreme Court today, it will outlive every person on this call, every person in the country. An amendment is permanent. And then that will be used in the future in ways that we can't even imagine now.
Right.
Future little girls who are just being born today during the pandemic, who knows in the future what they will do when they become lawyers, when they become legislators, with this extraordinarily powerful amendment and anchor in the Constitution.
Oh, and that's a good segue to your friend who's coming up next, Lisa Sales. I know you guys are buddies. She was so excited. You wanted to say hello, and Kate, I don't know if you have time to stay for the after chat a few minutes. We had a question last week about how to talk about abortion, and we're going to have a whole show on that. But I know with your background, maybe there's a way that you can help shape that conversation. So thank you for being here, and stick with us.
Yeah, of course.
And I love to bring Lisa on, because our next segment to put all these realities together is Lisa. I introduced you previously, but you are the chair of the Fairfax County Commission for Women, and you're an ERA just a champion. And recently you had something to do with the UN resolution that got approved down in Virginia in the General Assembly, which was quite the awesome on women's equality. And so that was just amazing. So bringing you in after that talk of hearing everything, and we did touch a little bit on policy, but really to get your input of what's going on in the Biden administration, the new office that they've created on gender equality. I'd like to get your input about that, give a little background on what your hopes are for what this will mean for women with all these issues you're hearing about.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a tough act to follow, Kate Kelly, let me tell you. So hi, Kate, I love you. And all of our friends on the call, and mega thanks, Catherine, to you and Robin, Stair, Krista for having me. It's great to be on a panel of friends and esteemed colleagues, with the exception of Sarah, who I'm glad to meet virtually for the first time. And so I just wanted to lay sort of some groundwork. And so before I talk about the new GPC, the White House Gender Policy Council, which is the first ever of its kind, because it, for the first time ever, reports directly to the president, not the first lady, not another entity or another secretary in another agency. So I wanted to talk about, no surprise, and set the stage about equality and share with you sort of much of what we know and what is not equality in America. And most of my colleagues have addressed some of this. Equality means not having a persistent wage gap between women and men, amounting to a gender wage gap of, I'm going to cheat and look at my stats here, of over $10,000 per year. Equality does not mean withholding, women holding nearly 60%. I don't think many know this. This doesn't get a lot of attention. Women hold nearly 60% of all student loan debt, verging on 10% higher debt than our male peers. Equality does not mean that even though women in America are statistically more educated than men, have more graduate degrees, right, that wages do not increase at the same rate as men. So this gap, it's driven in part by gender and racial discrimination, workplace harassment, job segregation, and a lack of workplace policies that my colleagues have mentioned. So part of that is care infrastructure, right? or maybe better said, caregiving infrastructure, traditionally also relegated to women for care of children and ailing loved ones. Women employed full-time in the United States lose a combined total, I mean, this is astronomical, of $956 billion with a B as in boy.
Whoa.
Due to the wage gap. And let's talk about sexual and domestic violence, right? And how that costs America more than $3 trillion with a T. When do we hear about that?
Right.
There are so many unequal power struggles, power relations going on here. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You mentioned COVID earlier. We see on our TV screens, right, every single day, this chart that tells us how many COVID cases there are, how many deaths there are, and not to at all take the focus away from COVID-19 and what it's doing to us.
Right.
When do we hear that 3 to 5 women annually are killed by an intimate partner? Excuse me, 3 to 5 women daily are killed by an intimate partner.
Daily, yeah, I was going to say, I know it's globally, it's out of control with the COVID.
40, so. I'm getting there, 40 million globally, right? 20 people are physically abused by a partner every minute, about 10 million annually. 735,000 people are sexually assaulted annually, and 250,000 contacts over about the past decade have been made to human trafficking hotlines. So what I've been saying for a long time is that violence against women in America has long since been a pandemic before the pandemic.
Right.
And I say to our elected officials, right, this is really critical. I say, if being beaten and sexually assaulted does not speak to your heart, then please give me a moment to speak to your wallet, right? By talking about how this impacts our economy,
right,
our communities, that this price tag is $3 trillion that we know of. It is so underreported.
Yes.
We don't have a handle on it.
I'd like to sort of, just for the last part of this, is the policy element of it. So
yeah,
what really is overwhelming is the list that you just gave us. And I think that's the part where we know that policies do help, and you see this new office and it does have some teeth in it. You know, that because it is kind of frustrating to think, oh, the Equal Rights Amendment will solve all our problems, and they really won't. We have to keep fighting for all these things. But I'm hoping, so just to just wrap up with the policy look of this, and because we know we couldn't pass policy in Virginia on some easy things, family paid leave, which makes me believe that our patriarchal countries is really comfortable with all that trillions of dollars of free paid everything that women contribute and unseen labor. And they're even in capitalist countries, very comfortable relying on this servitude labor, right? In some ways. So how, just really, and maybe just a minute wrap up this policy. What's your thought on it, and what kind of teeth? And we're gonna then welcome in Ellie, who's the icon of feminism coming in next. So just give us a thought on that.
So, well, this is the first ever Gender Policy Council, so policies in its name. So right away driving policy rather than just being relegated, although important, to outreach and initiatives.
Right.
And it will be focused on the whole of government. So they'll address economic security, healthcare, racial justice, gender-based violence will be elevated, and even foreign policy, which the other previously went unaddressed. Right. And we know there's been this tremendous backsliding of women due to the pandemic, women leaving the workforce in droves, 100% of the job losses. So they'll likely look at the workforce, 5 million jobs lost in 2020. Right. They'll likely look at the evictions due to COVID-19. Many don't realize that something like 50% of women are head of households. That impacts children, as Sarah Jane was saying. I think that the GPC could advocate for the ERA. We might be surprised this month. The US House plans to eliminate the time limit on our equality again this week, the week of March.
Yay!
And I think something important they could really do is station people in every federal agency and ask them to conduct racial pay, gender equity assessments, and determine, who's marginalized, who's discriminated against, and is there diverse female representation at all levels of leadership, including judicial diversity, just as what they're doing with the cabinet. So they're going to have to look at new laws, and once the ERA is enshrined in the Constitution, every single law at every level is going to have to be reexamined.
Well, I so appreciate your expert insights on this, and I'm glad you're in a good room with a bunch of friends on the panel, because you guys have been fighting for so long, and we really can't, it's enough with in the sense of the resistance. It really is time to really just kind of, this has to happen, and we just have to demand it, and hopefully this policy level will help. So thank you, Lisa. So stay in the room too, and if you could stay after for a chat. I love to bring Krista back up, because Krista, you're going to introduce. First, I want to say hi to my friend Ellie. Smeal, how are you, Ellie? Krista's going to be interviewing you, but you're my icon, because I'm a graduate in women's studies. So every time I get to be on with you, I just feel like I'm meeting a celebrity. Because back in the day, this is you were just so admired. You were just the icon of the movement. So thank you for being here. And Krista, I will just hand it over to you, and you guys just enjoy yourselves, as we say.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. We are so excited to have Ellie Smeal, president of Feminist Majority, with us this afternoon. And so far the panelists have really done a great job of summarizing kind of the current state of where we are in terms of women's equality and where we have to go. So we've talked about disparities, racial and ethnic disparities. We've talked about the policy issues. We've talked about reproductive health, and we've talked about economics in general. And I would just love to hear from you, Ellie, on both a global scale and in the US. Where are we? What does feminism mean now? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Unmute, yeah.
Oh.
Ellie, you turned off your camera. Can you turn on your camera and your audio?
Okay.
You want to launch that poll?
Yes.
Launch the poll.
Let's go ahead and launch the poll.
There we go. Go ahead, read it.
Where does the US rank globally in the gender gap for health and survival? What's the ranking of the US?
Oh my God. It's moving fast. All right, so I see Ellie's got her audio on. I'm gonna end the poll.
Okay, the correct answer is actually 70th. That is really, really scary. So thank you, Ellie. So just like I was saying, talk to us about what does feminism mean today, both globally and nationally?
Well, it means that we're still struggling, we're still fighting, and there's so much to be done. I mean, you heard all the domestic inequalities. Well, internationally, it's very, very, well, let me give you some specifics. We have a big campaign on Afghanistan. Right now, the Taliban is targeting women leaders. Yesterday, they killed a woman gynecologist. The day before, they killed 3 women who were in television and in journalism. But it's every day. We're among those who are targeted, because there's peace talks going on. We fought, and the women in Afghanistan fought to get onto the negotiations. They are on the negotiations now. Each one of these women, I've been privileged to talk to them, are so brave. They have had all kinds of death threats. One has been, there was an attempt assassination. She was shot in the arm. She's still going back on the tables. Because it's so important. We can't desert these women, because they have made wonderful gains in this last year, not last year, in this last 20 years. Women are judges, but they then just shot 3 judges and killed them. But there's over 200. and they keep stepping up. They're now in all kinds of professions, and there's real progress. But we can't desert them. And I feature them is because the Taliban openly took away all human rights from women, the most extreme in the world. Now they do have guaranteed constitutional rights, but the United States has put them into this hole. That there's now a peace talk with the Taliban, and during this peace talk, they've been assassinating leaders, both males and females, but definitely targeting outspoken women. But here in the United States, we're still fighting. I've been working on it, but the feminists in this country now 4 generations on the Equal Rights Amendment. By the way, it's going to be voted on in the House of Representatives the week of March 15th. I hope everybody on here not only lets their representative know that they're, in this area, I think they're all for it, but still let them know that this is an important vote and they have to fight for. Be there for us. And then the Senate, it's going to be. We feel like we can make the House, but I do think it's close because it's been so partisan. It shouldn't be partisan. It should be an issue for this country, long overdue. But anyway, I want people to tell them that they appreciate everyone that supports us, and those who don't, give them a push. At the same time, we then go into the Senate, and we've got to do something to make it so that we can win with a majority vote. We cannot be stopped by a filibuster. So we really have to press our senators, both of them are supporters in Virginia, but to lead in that and to make sure we get it through both houses, that we don't, that the Senate is not used to cool down all chances for a better life. And so the reason I featured 2 fights going on this minute, everything interrelates. For example, the same week of March 15th, the Reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act will also be up. We need yes votes on that and strong yes votes on that, because it's been blocked again by the Republican Senate. It's just say it where it's at. As you know, the president is very much for that law. He authored it and was one of the champions for it, but it's been held up. It cannot continue to be held up. We have to stop making these political issues. This is a no-brainer. And by the way, how the ERA interfaces with the Violence Against Women Act is it provides a constitutional basis for the Violence Against Women Act and will make it even stronger and better to implement.
Absolutely, Ellie. We have someone in the chat, Finale says, I think this goes back to the discussion last week on messaging. Some of the women's issues intersect with race. If we can't win alone, maybe messaging these issues differently would get us to at least some solutions, smaller wins, but a win nonetheless. I would love to know from you for this final question. Let's just say we get the ERA passed, right? We talked about today how all these disparities still exist. What types of shifts in society still will need to happen in order for us to get to true equality, even after we get the ERA?
Well, essentially, it must be implemented. But I want to talk about also the first part of that question. The civil rights movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement, the very Latino movement, all of us have to work together. And in reality, there's so many fronts, and these things all intertwine. They really do. And we have been working together. I think sometimes there's this mythology that the movements don't work together. We do. We do. We're great supporters. We want to end racial discrimination, ethnic discrimination, gender discrimination, LGBTQ, and obviously women's rights. But we have to work together, and we shouldn't let the opposition divide and conquer. We are the majority if we're all together. And basically, equality of rights is for all people. We don't want to leave anybody behind. And so I really think it's very, very important that we, we say our history. I mean, all the Shirley Chisholm, way back then, right? She was for the Equal Rights Amendment. I don't know of a major women's civil rights leader, a major African-American leader, Latina leader, whatever, that has not been for all these rights, and understand they intertwine. They understand that they don't operate, and who benefits? A small portion of very, very rich corporations that still exploit cheap labor. Let's be real. The reasons we've got to fight so hard is so many people profit from discrimination and taking advantage of people. So anyway, I just want to say, I mean, we're really lucky here in that we got a lot of people to fight with, we're all working together, and that we can celebrate. But remember, even in Virginia, we're not we now it's turned blue, but it's not stable there. Mm-hmm. And there's so many lies that we have to deal with. We can't be fooled. I think I salute you for having these power luncheons, keeping people informed. And we need to be, we got one vote in the Senate majority, and we have only 3 or 4 votes or 5 votes. It's very, very tight in the House. We have to be political and make sure that we win in 2022. And this year, you're in the off year, 2021 in Virginia.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No, you're absolutely right.
And I'll just say, I think that's exactly it right there. It's the messaging of us working together, because they're trying so hard to divide and conquer us. I think that's the solution for what's next after the ERA. We have to change that frame of mind.
Yes. Yes. And Ellie, if you could stay with us, I know, Krista, you have to pop off. And so thank you for that great segment. I have a follow-up question for Ellie. So Ellie, I'm curious, when your work in Afghanistan is so important, and I know you're passionate about it. And what I noticed with the recent last couple of years and the rise, even with this insurrection, the mixture of religion, of this just this movement that makes me feel like it's almost like a Taliban movement in America. Like it really reminds me of it. And I just wanted to, have your last thoughts on that. What I see is this rise of hatred, the combination of guns, the violence, the anti-women, the misogyny, the patriarchy, the white supremacy, all rolled up in one. We're seeing it now. We're seeing it in such force. And we saw that attack. I thought to myself, my gosh, I feel like I'm in a foreign country. I see what happened in Afghanistan wasn't always like that. They were very liberal. Women wore mini skirts, and they had the sense of progress in Iraq, even. And we can go backwards. And it worries me. What's your last thoughts, wrap-up thoughts on that? And please stay with us. We're a little bit over 1, but this is such a great conversation. So I hope you'll stay with us in the room. And we do have the after chat too. So what's your thoughts? Is that just crazy talk from me, or I just really feel it?
No, all these things are they've been with us for a long time. By the way, we can see it easier now. But because all of our consciences have been raised. I mean, we see the injustices. But for example, in Afghanistan, they were a constitutional democracy. They have to be in a crossroads. It was a proxy war with Russia, with the Soviet Union at that time. And what's the deal? The deal is oil comes down from the Caspian Sea, the pipelines they want to build. They wanted, in my opinion, there was a move for a dictatorship. So the oil would flow and they just have to pay a royalty. I mean, it's very complicated. I can't do it in 2 seconds. Right. But also, by the way, they are the largest producer of heroin in the world. We talk about the opioid crisis here. Right. Well, where do you think it's coming from? All this is big money, big money. There goes my phone. But then in addition to that, in addition to this, I want us to think of our own country. When I was president, and now is decades ago, we were fighting when I got here in the 70s, let's be real, we were fighting still segregationists that were in the Senate. I mean, it's not that it's gotten worse, it's just that we allow religion and a lot of things to be used to keep people in their places. But we've got great movements here. And I just think that we have to have more confidence in ourselves, not let the enemy divide us, and win for a clear-cut victory, not one vote here and one vote there. Goodness sakes, we have got to, and we can't put in our brain that we're going to lose in 2022 or here in 2021. We got to say that the COVID helped open the eyes of a lot of the problems of this country. We now got to solve them.
No, you're right. And you always are good at ending with the fire in the belly. When you came to this summit, your last speech got us up on our feet. So I appreciate you getting us up out of our seats today, because I so agree with you. As Robin always says, act like winners. We are on the right side of history. And women's equality just seems to be intertwined with this idea of power and dictatorship even. And like you said, I think it just will take all of us working together. So thank you for being here. If you could still stick around, please do. I understand if some of you have to leave, but it is time to wrap up the show. So Robin, if you could pull up